Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the new Conversations in Groove podcast. You might ask yourself, what are Conversations in Groove? Well, it's basically me having conversations with a lot of my friends to find out what their groove exactly is. Is it music? Is it TV and film? Some of them play guitar. Some of them play drums. Some of them don't play anything at all. But we have conversations about how they got to where they are in their careers, things we've possibly done in here, and things they have upcoming. So, welcome to Earthtones Recording Studio, the home for the Conversations in Groove podcast. If you like what you hear, please leave us comments in the comment section below. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Earthtones Official. Subscribe to the podcast on all of your podcast apps. I hope you're ready to have a good time. Welcome to Conversations in Groove. All right, cool. So here we are on episode 5 of the Conversations in Groove podcast. And this week, my good buddy, speaking of groove, aptly named podcast because I have the groove master himself, the Clapper Dapper, Mr. Geoff Clapp, ladies and
Greetings.
gentlemen.
Good to be here. Good to be here, Bench.
Yeah, dude.
Just getting some earth tones going. That's all we're doing.
Yeah,
like that?
man.
See what I did?
That was good. That was good. That was like 15 seconds. That was like world record.
I'm just in there.
I'm
just excited to be here with you, bro.
How much do I owe you? Am I running you a tab?
No,
for mentions?
I think I owe you for the many favors you bestowed upon my life, sir. Wow. Yeah.
So let's talk today, man, about let's talk about a lot of stuff. Let's talk about first off, let's tell everybody kind of what you do. You are one of my favorite drummers. You are my friend. You are my brother. And but when I watch you play drums, it's amazing. And if people don't know you, I'm gonna put links. I'll have links in the video. You know, I'll have an Earthtones link like down here somewhere.
Hit the link, hit the like button.
Then I'll have Jeff's link up here somewhere. So if you guys need to go find Geoff, you can and you will. And so let's tell everybody kind of where you got your start playing drums and kind of what your drum gig is. I hang out with a lot of different types of musicians because of what I do.
I know you do.
How I came up. So I hang out with a lot of rock guys. I hang out with some jazz guys. I hang out with a lot of blues guys. So let's kind of tell everybody what your drum expertise is and how you sort of got there, I guess, from when you were young and kind of coming up.
Okay, well, nobody knows this, but I sound exactly like Neil Peart on all the records. But that gig was already taken, so I never went for that. I went ahead and let Neil take care of that.
And that, man, that's so gracious of you.
I let him and Bonham and Stuart Copeland. I just figured, you know what, man? Why mess up a good thing if it's not? It's already rolling. So
why exactly?
I mean, why, man? I just I just started when I was a little kid. I just always kind of gravitated, I guess, towards the rhythm of the music. And my parents got me a Sesame Street album of music. It was actually a vinyl. You know, So I put that on, and then that Christmas they bought me a little like K&K toy drum set, right?
Dude, was K&K toys the best?
The best, bro. I mean, it's like if you were to walk into a microphone superstore with speakers and stuff you had never seen in your life, I'm like, holy crap. So we went, this was in Texarkana, Texas. We lived there for a few years, and we lived in this flat ranch house. And so right when you went in the house, that's where, of course, I decided to set up the drums because that's where the turntable was. So I set them right up and I'd play along. And so I guess I kind of developed a little bit of an ear in how to play with the music instead of just beating drums. So I've always been gravitated. I always like to try to blend in, And I'm kind of like that personally too. I like to blend in socially where I'm at too, because I don't like being uncomfortable,
Right.
And
that's a thing. I mean, and you just don't think about it, man. You know, like
Yeah.
you don't think about being uncomfortable or wanting to blend into something, and that's yeah. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry, man.
Oh man, I mean, and then I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, Benji.
Take your time, man. We got time. I got time if you got time.
Well, okay then. So in the backyard, we had Happy, our dog, and we'd throw the baseball against the house for hours. And we had a little
Baseball
pool.
against the house, yeah, man.
Oh yeah, man. Oh, the salt. I know we threw a tennis ball until this guy broke the window, and Dad had to fix one of them little things. And yeah, Dad's like, go beat your drums. He basically said, you're not an athlete, you're a drummer. And that really stuck with me because I love golf and tennis, and that's what I played. But Benji, this is probably a very pivotal point in my life when I said, you know what? I'm a drummer. In 7th grade, I went out for basketball.
Yeah.
And I made manager. So
oh,
yeah, buddy.
Well, hey,
Yeah.
at least they included you.
Yeah, they included me. So, and I went up there every Saturday morning, and I was the manager for a year and had the clipboard.
Hey, less work, more money, right? In management.
Yeah. Wait, that's true. That's true. I should have managed Jordan since he's from North Carolina.
Right.
But man, I during one of those games, I'm hanging out with my friend Kelly Moore, and she mentioned something about band or snare drum, and I just thought to myself, you know what? I just have more fun in band. It's more fun. It's more natural. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep doing it. I'm gonna pursue that.
Yeah.
And do sports on the side, and I'm also a pretty decent dancer. But Christy thinks I should be a backstage dancer, not a backup dancer. Okay, backstage. So all my big dreams were squashed.
Dang
so
it,
I just
man.
decided, I know, man, the male model, that didn't work out.
So drums were just what was left over out of the.
It was like Plan B. It was Plan B,
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah. No, actually, it was not. It was always, you remember those frozen, they were before, what grandma used to put food in and freeze them.
Yeah.
Well, I used to set those up in the living room on the couch and just drive my parents nuts.
There you go.
Ever since.
And do you know, I've had a couple of conversations here with some friends of mine, and it's funny because I had Eric Gales on a few weeks ago, and him being a guitar player, he talked about the same thing. He said, in my house, I would get the pots and pans out and the spoons and the soup ladles, and that's just that. It starts there, and it's so weird how that's ingrained in you, and it starts at that age. You can't stop it.
I still have that. Remember those wooden spoons, man? They were just unbreakable. Yeah, it's great. Can't even find them anymore. But so yeah, I mean, you get a certain tone, and then my mom used to work at a church, so one summer I would just go up and hang out in the church and run around and just be with her. And they had this big fellowship hall with a Ludwig. Do you remember the Ludwig that was blue, red, white, and blue striped?
Yes.
In the 70s, probably 77.
A little sparkly.
This thing was brand new with those clear heads and the silver dot. I was like, and so I would hit them and they would just resound in that big fellowship. I mean, huge. I was like, wow, drums sound great.
Right.
I thought that's what they're supposed to sound like all the time. So then when I go to the store and look out with Dad, I'm like, these don't.
So you were already listening to the sound of the room before So you're like, look, I'm looking. I know I'm only 10 and I'm looking for a drum kit, but I gotta have a big wooden room.
I gotta have a big sound,
high ceilings and all that. And
of course, you being a producer in a studio guru, you're always doing this with the drummer about drum ring or tone or
Yeah, man.
It's just always something, man. If the bass drum's too low, it's in the way of the organ. Something.
Right.
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 So I've just kind of conceded to whatever, bro. Right. Studio is one thing, and then live, I try to be as ringy as I can. I think it was based off that first experience of just being like, wow, I can do something and it sounds big. And it hits you here.
Right.
Hits you here.
Right.
And I talked to a friend of mine, Brian, a lot about how you tune your snare drum or toms or whatever to hit you right here when you hit it hard. If it doesn't do that, something's wrong, especially in New Orleans because it was so humid.
Right.
You'd have to tune the bottom higher so it actually gives some ring.
Right.
So I think that's where I got kind of some of my strength and touch because it was never in the middle. You would have to either really make it happen or really be just super gentle in those hotel situations or
knowing that too, like walking into the situation and knowing like, okay, here's how loud I'm allowed, not allowed, but here's what the gig calls for. Right. And I have to play like this. So therefore my drums are going to sound better if I tune them this way because I can only really hit them this way at the gig.
Yep.
And as opposed to just going in and just bashing the living hell out of everything.
Yeah.
So, it sounds great. And then you sit back on them and they just don't do anything. You know what I'm saying?
Well, man, to that story, I'll give you a prime example. In Greensboro, we played with Charlie and Sam. And I borrowed this guy, Jamie Understein's Gretsch drums, right? Mm-hmm. 70s, maple gum, just the greatest kid ever. And they sounded great outside, and then they sounded beautiful on Elm Street Lounge, and it was a louder gig. And then, man, we got in the studio, it was just too loud. I tuned them to where they would, and so I had to switch kits and go to the Reverie kit because it was already contained for that specific studio.
Right.
And or your studio, it wouldn't have worked. It'd have been
right.
So you kind of dodged the bullet on that one, buddy. We spent like 3 hours trying to figure that one out.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that you said too earlier that people don't realize in a studio situation, and also too, I guess partly in a live situation, in a studio situation, I can take most any drum kit in this whole place and I can set it up and I can hit them to where I think they sound great. And I can have 5 different drummers come in and sit down behind that kit, mic'd up the exact same way, and it sounds like 5 different drum kits, man.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting point. That's a great point.
Yeah, and it's all about like with you, when you come in here, I can set up my Reveries, which are back there in the room. You can't really see them right now, but they're back in that room.
Beautiful, yeah.
And I can set the Reveries up, or I can get I've got my Ludwig Ringo kit sitting up here.
Woo!
Up on top.
That's a great kit.
That's a great kit. And the thing is, you know how as a drummer, and that's how like we're going to speak to a lot of drummers today. I hope.
Okay.
I hope we're talking to a lot of drummers today, because I'm going to kind of point this thing to. You want to know what's up? You need to listen to this episode of this podcast, because the thing is, I can set up any of these kits, and you make them speak the way that they're supposed to speak. How you hit them and how you adjust, and you have to adjust on the fly. You
have to
just have that one way that you play. Yep. And sometimes it's not as convenient to the drummer to have to do that. Yep. But you realize that your job as a studio drummer is to make this thing sound this way. No matter if you adjust the kit, adjust yourself, and all this other stuff. So. Yep. I want to talk a lot about that, and so I know that you've already mentioned New Orleans, and I know that you're not necessarily typecast as a New Orleans guy, but dude, you're a New Orleans guy, and you can't.
I'll take it. You
can't undo that, and that takes a thing. Yeah, right.
I'm honored, man. Yeah,
it takes a thing to do that, because there's cats that are coming up. And grown men, and they still try to do that thing, and it just kind of pales in comparison. Like you have to kind of go there.
You have to live there. You need to live it and experience it and get rejected by it so many times. You have to fail.
So tell everybody, and it doesn't have to be a brief synopsis, but tell everybody about your New Orleans experience, how you got there. You're talking about Texarkana, kind of how you got there and how you knew that's where you belonged and wanted to be, and how you adjusted as far as learning and how to get in that circle. I know that may be a long, winding 5-part question, but
well, you're lucky I'm not Christy, or I'd start over here and end up here, because you know how women. Yeah. It's like, what are you trying to say? We just say, get to the end. All right, but I won't do that to you, man. I will give you the historical lineage of Clapper Dapper. So I was in High Point, North Carolina, growing up, and born in Greensboro, for those who want to know, Cone Hospital. And I was in the band, in little jazz band at Northeast High School. Went to Andrews, T. Wingate Andrews.
I didn't know you went to Northeast also.
Yeah, you went there?
No, I went to Southern, but I went to
Southern,
Southern
yeah.
Guilford. So we were in the you remember when there was a county school system and a
Yes,
city
I
school
do.
system?
I
That's
do.
crazy, right?
I knew I'd seen you somewhere, man.
I swear.
Little
Dude,
Benji.
you don't
Little Benji's running down the street.
Dude, you don't know how many people and how many I'm having, I'm doing this podcast, like I'm having people in that either live here or they have some sort of ties here. And man, I'm learning something about, I mean, you guys are my friends, but you learn something about your friends every day. I learned that about you today, man.
I grew up like 20 minutes from your studio.
Crazy.
In High Point. On Geyer and Glenwood. So not Glenwood, but Seven Oaks. Anyway.
All right.
So I'm in High Point, and I have a CB700 purple kit. I have it set up like Neil Peart and playing the signals every day. And obviously all the great Yes and early Genesis, and Chris turned me onto that Robert Plant. So I was kind of all over the map as far as from Steely Dan to obviously James Brown has always been around. I don't know how that got in our house because we were just more of a classical home. My dad did classical NPR, and my mom was a music minister, which is not the most soulful music you've ever heard.
Depending on which church you're at, son.
Well, not this church, not our churches. Trust me, buddy.
I know.
But this molded my ear in a certain way, very, Stuart Copeland meets, whatever. And I thought Spyro Gyra, nothing against him. I thought that was real jazz. So that's fusion, just acoustic, whatever that is.
Right. Right.
It's great music. Dave Samuels, love that cat. So Dave Samuels was the marimbist. And so I said, man, I would really like to, number one, get out of High Point. And and then I went to Winston-Salem School of the Arts for 11th and 12th grade on a scholarship for snare drum. So I studied classical percussion and timpani and snare drum with Massey Johnson.
Wow.
Yeah. And Massey was the principal of, Winston, Greensboro, North Carolina. He was just one of those dudes, Brevard. He was everywhere.
Right.
And just the sweetest little dude. Always wore a tie and a wool sweater, no matter how hot it was downstairs at the drum room. He would just, let's try that again, Jeffrey. And just, really taught me how to touch the drums with, really, I got a lot of touch from that. And then we had a guy named Scott who was in the jazz band at the time, 1987. He just had this fluidity, Benji, that just like, my head would be like, what? Because I was so aggressive, man. And I was very this. And so come back to Scott about 5 years later when I'm in New Orleans, and I realized he probably had checked out some cats from New Orleans or something. He just had that thing.
Right.
And so anyway, I had a car. I was doing West Side Story on drum set in Catawba College.
Shut up. Golly.
Yeah. So I was going over there every day in my dad's Dodge 1986 white Dodge Aspen that had those orange blinkers, clink and clink. You remember those things? Like they were like this big. So that's what I remember. Yeah, and then so I had a car.
You're like me. I can't remember what I did. I can't remember what I did last night, but I could tell you what the sound of a Dodge Aspen blinker sounds like.
Anyway, so a friend of mine, Will Tipton, this classical trumpet player, had a big old picture, a poster of Wynton Marsalis, but it was Wynton Marsalis in a tuxedo and a classical horn, a smaller classical horn. And he said, man, I know you got a car, Clapp. Can you please take me to Chapel Hill? I got a trumpet lesson with this cat. And I was like, okay, cool. Because all my cousins were in Chapel Hill,
Oh, okay.
So this is before Starbucks and all that. So we went to the cafeteria, got some coffee, and then we went down, and I met Wynton was in his skivvies, just his boxers, giving this dude a trumpet lesson. And I'm like over there watching the Knicks game, but every time Wynton would pick up the horn, I'd be like, damn. And then my friend would pick up the horn, and his sound would be like this. Wynton was like, I was like, dude, this dude's bad. And then Wynton said, and it was all classical stuff, no jazz. And he went and said, do you want to come to the concert tonight? And we're like, sure. The concert started at 8. The band showed up at 10:01. Nobody left for 2 hours. I swear, it's a true story. Nobody left. All of a sudden, Wynton walks out, Marcus Roberts, Reginald Veal, and Herlin Riley quartet. And I thought it was going to be a classical concert. I was not expecting. And so for the next 2 hours, I'm like, oh, that's jazz. And it just,
wow.
Just to experience it and feel it and be like, for 2 hours, like, what? So I went up and I said, Herlin, or Mr. Riley, what are those little brushy things? I've seen them, but like, I had the plastic version. He's like, oh man, it's just this, man. He's like, Clap, just wash a windshield, bro. Just do this. And he showed me. He said, you should come to New Orleans and live, and I can kind of get you started. And went and walked by at that very moment. This is after the show. So we're on like a case, the bass drum's in. We're playing on top of a hard case. Remember those hard cases?
Oh yeah.
The little thing. Yeah. So it said Ahmad Jamal on it because he was playing with Ahmad. Herlin had just got off the road. And I just remember that. And I just remember thinking like, oh, this is really cool. And he was so encouraging. And right then went and said, say, bro. And he like hit me on the head, like back of the head. We had a little friendship already. He said, bro, you should go study with my daddy. He's starting to teach at UNO this year. I was like, oh. And so that was it. My life went spit because I was going to Manhattan School to do classical and do the thing and be a rock drummer. I was going to be, Rush. I was going to take Neil's place.
Yeah, of course.
Kick Neil off the stool.
Right.
But he lucked out. He dodged a bullet. So
that's awesome.
So
dude.
I went there and bro, I'm going to tell you something, man. I had to unlearn everything I'd ever learned about playing music. Like everything. I had to back up, turn it around and look at it like, oh.
And how old were you at this point?
19.
Wow. Dude,
and then
do you realize how lucky, and I say lucky, there's no luck involved in a lot of this stuff. People are just like, man, you're lucky. And I'm like, hey, man, luck has a lot to do with it, but,
Big guy.
Exactly, dude. But, man, at 19, I remember because everybody has their, like, moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they have their moment where it's this realization thing of, man, all this stuff I've been doing up to this point, maybe that's not what is going to, maybe that's not what's going to have any sort of longevity in this thing. And you meet cats like Marsalis, you meet all this stuff and you go like, man, those guys are doing it this way. And they're actually professional musicians. They're not pop stars. They're not rock stars. Yeah. And it's nothing against any of that because, it takes work to do it all. But the thing being, when you have that realization point, man, mine was at maybe 25, 26. Okay. So for you at 19, that's good. You almost had a jump, Anyway, carry on.
No, man, I want to hear about your story too, man. But anyway, so that was number one. Number two was Herlin. Remember those big old vans with the big thing on top? They're like 30,000 pounds. Yeah. He said, I'm gonna pick you up, Clap. And
they were called conversion vans, weren't they?
Yeah, right. and he probably got 1 mile per gallon thing. And I just remember it smelling like just real like homey and family inside. It just like, those cloth seats you can't find anymore. It's just
they had like some of them had like shag carpet in them, man. Like your living room.
Orange shag carpet. It was orange and tan. And I said, yeah, man. He said, just bring a snare drum and a belt because I didn't know what a strap for a snare drum was. And he said, bring some sticks. And so, bro, Stanley Stevens, the drummer from Preservation Hall, had passed away. And this was, I'd been there a year, and this was the summertime of that year. So, dude, it was like sweltering. Early June. And Stanley and I became really good friends because Ellis Marsalis said, this is my old drummer. You need to go listen to him and get to know him. So that was a university in itself, listening and watching,
Right.
Danny Barker, dude. Danny Barker.
So, and explain to the people who Ellis is.
Okay, Ellis Marsalis is the father of Wynton and Branford and Delphio and Jason, and they have a son named Mboya. He's got, he's a special needs kid. He has autism. He's autistic. And then they have another son, Ellis Sr., who's a writer.
Okay.
So this family and his wife, Doris, her family was extremely educated, extremely successful New Orleans family. And Ellis and her just made this powerhouse of an intellectual, musical, artistic, yet very loving family that I was able to go into their house on Hickey Street, 8318, bro. and just go into where his little studio is and have Jason say, "Hey man, check out this Vince Guaraldi record, Cast Your Fate to the Wind," and just be like,
dude,
like an education. And Jason was like, he's probably 14. And so they kind of took me under the wing and was super nice and helped me out. But on this day, Herlin and Shannon, bro, I mean, it was Shannon Powell, Herlin Riley. If you hadn't heard of those guys, drummers, Shannon Powell, check him out. Lofty's Roach Souffle, Harry Connick Jr. Tree. He's the dude. And then Herlin Riley. They started shooting. Like, I was like, and so I'm sitting there rushing it, and Herlin just went like this. He went, "Stop playing, Clap," and just stop me. He said, just follow us. So for an hour we did that, got in front of the house at a really slow tempo with all these musicians from everybody, Wendell Brunius to, man, God, I mean, everybody. Anybody who ever knew Stanley, which is the musical community. So not only do I see people that I would learn to know later as musicians, all dressed up, spent their hot-ass Saturday afternoon celebrating this dude's life in front of his house. And Benji, this was the moment that changed my life. I thought funk was funk until I saw Herlin and Shannon with the bass drum and snare drum circling in front of his house because his mom was too big to come out. And she was just dying. I mean, tears. And everybody was either really happy or really sad. There was no middle ground.
Right.
The spiritual aspect, you could almost see the density of the spirit of the groove, because it's called the groove, the king of the groove, man. This was so funky, bro. And my jaw, first time I saw Herlin was one thing, but then when I saw Herlin playing for a New Orleans drummer in front of his house with Herlin's on the bass drum, because the stronger, older cat always plays the bass drum. It was like shot, tap, shot, bam! I was like, oh. Damn, damn, for 10 minutes, and then they stopped. I was just like exhausted spiritually. I was like, that's what it's about. So about 5 years later, after I'd done 100 funerals, I finally got it. It finally stuck one day. I was like, that's how you play it. And I would practice it, and I would sound like a little, college kid. It's like, it took me, finally I just let go of myself and be like, dude, it's all about the fours, your one, and then if people aren't dancing. It just took me living through it and failing and watching a million, Nick Payton and all these super bad New Orleans, studying with Walter Payton on the road, unofficially on the bandstand with Leroy Jones playing, and he'd be like, no, do this. And you do that. You're like, oh, okay. It was just, an oral tradition that was filtered into your brain. It's like, wow. And then so I learned touch, feel, patience, groove. But at the same time, I was hanging with like the modern jazz scene. So, right. That kind of pulled me, and that's how I moved to New York, to Brooklyn, and got all that, came back. And I was subbing for Herlin in Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, which was unbelievably.
Say that to everybody again. You were subbing for him.
I would sub for her.
At the what again? Say that.
The Jazz at Lincoln Center.
Jazz at Lincoln Center. Okay.
Yeah, you got super bad cats, Sherman Irby, and Winton sitting right here by the drums. Like, really, bro? Seriously? So I'm just subbing. I'm not even doing it. I mean, just, right. Again, getting my butt kicked as a big band drummer. And just, Herlin has been one of those angels, bro, that just touches people's lives.
Right.
And so I think this is key. We were at Donna's one night, which is kind of like an Elm Street Lounge in Greensboro, but much more New Orleans. And two things happened. I heard Shannon Powell take a cowbell and put the stick inside the cowbell and grooved everybody out for 10 minutes, just the cowbell. Wow. Just the cowbell. I think Doug Belote might have been there that night. But and then the other time, I literally saw Herlin save a dude's life. The dude turned purple. And Herlin went over and put ice on him and like lifted him up. It was just like, man, this dude. I think the thing is that I gained most was the community spirit of being a drummer.
Right.
Be about the community, man, not yourself, not your groove sometimes I have little bouts with people where to put the beat, how to put the beat. And that's not, and Herlin just, well, he'd be like, man, wherever they start the tune, do your best to stay there.
Right.
You know, play with confidence and play like a man, or if you're a woman, play like a woman. Do you, and play great time, not good time. It's like practice great time. But then he's like, Clap, at the end of the day, you got to enjoy yourself because people are watching you do it. He's like, that's the key. And the enjoyment of it lets all that self stuff go. And then, as a believer in God, I'm like, it's just not me. It's just his gift flowing through me, and you just let that flow. Then it's not selfish.
Right. And when you just said, you've said it, you've said the same phrase in the past 10 minutes. You just came back to it, and I was going to come back to it myself and say, because it becomes about whatever your version of letting go is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when you let go, it's like you take all the stuff, like you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn, and then you take all that learning and you think that all these things that you've learned, that you have to like actively, forcefully apply them to something. Well, I did this, I was taught this, so I have to do this here, and this is what goes. And it's like you have to be able to. You have to be, I mean, you call it go with the flow, you call it letting go of whatever, but the first thing you do have to do, man, is you have to let go of that, all that preconceived stuff, and I mean, you have to know that stuff, and you have to learn it, but you almost
you have to know the information, right? Yeah.
And and another thing that you said too, man, is that you had to at 19 unlearn so many things that you had learned.
I had to be like, nope. Because I never had an older person tell me. It was always my peers. Right. Be like, play louder, man. You know, or like, and play like Bonham. You're like, well, how? Okay. Yeah. You know? But what one thing is, man, is you know, bro, music. It's exactly like driving a car. You're gonna get in your car and you're going here. You can get in the car and be pissed off how everybody else is driving and try to control it. And by the time you get there, you're mad. Or you can just get in your car and let everything bounce off you and just enjoy the ride. You're going to get there anyway, you know, and just be positive, man. Just get your own groove and then let the band come to you sometimes. And sometimes you come to the band. Depends on, but even great players have their issue. Everybody has their issue because they're human beings. Right. Everybody has control issues or insecurity issues or no vision issues, you know, or overly visionary issues. Oh my God, man. Yeah. I don't know, that's not right. You know, come on. Yeah. Yeah. And if anywhere it becomes prevalent, it's definitely the studio. I mean, it magnifies your goods and bads. That's why I think all drummers should just hire a band, hire your peers, go record just for the sake of failing. You're going to fail. And be open to that. And be literally, I just was getting ready to say, you were just saying be open. Like you have to be, you have to go in and like when I'm in this is my controlled environment in here, you know, when I'm in this controlled environment and we're cutting records and I know how things should sound in a certain way, you have to be willing, if you're a player and you're in an ensemble, you have to be willing to listen to yourself, do something that's not maybe too becoming that as it comes out of the speakers, and then adjust yourself. Instead of, that's the only way I know how to do it, and I'm just going to stand up and try to be a badass and try to say that's the way it goes. And it's like, you got to hear exactly. And you got to hear your own mistakes and adjust to them, or you're not learning anything. And dude, there's guys that are in their, you know, I'm 53. There's guys that are my age that come in here to play drums, and they have just played that way for 40 years. And I try to adjust things, and I try to say, can you hear that? You know, not just drummers, but I mean, you know, every kind of musician. And I'm like, can you kind of hear that's the way that kind of needs to go? And it's like they don't want to hear it, and that becomes a personal thing. Like that's their personality, and then you said, you know, they're human beings, and then you sort of have to get into the human aspect of who they are and why they're the player that they are. And then I'm just like, man, and then that's why studio guys get called, because I don't have to hold those guys' hands and say, let's have a talk about humanity. You know, it's like, can you just play? You know, either you're a teachable spirit or you're not. There's no, you're teachable. Dude. Like, I'll be honest, man, recently I've had some stuff in the studio, and then I look back, I'm like, man, Was I being teachable? Was I being stubborn? Was I being felt like I was being led and I got defensive? And the answer was yes. Like I would hear myself, and it was sounding good to me, but it wasn't what they wanted.
Right.
And they could have called a Doug Belote or a Steve Gadd or a Terrence Higgins or a Zigaboo, somebody that's just straight funkier than I am. Because I always have to have a second line, because that's how I came into being funky.
Right.
Or my version of funky. I mean,
Right.
I just do what I do.
Oh,
and
please.
sometimes it's magic,
and that's
bro.
what you should do.
And so, but then there's times when you can't do what you do, like you're saying, and just be like this guy. And that is one of my weak points. And so at 50 years old, even though I look like 30, thank you very much.
That's right.
That's right. I still have way to go. And literally this morning, I'm in there. I went to the Dollar Tree to get remember those 9-volt batteries?
Oh,
I still got a physical metronome for my dad. So I put that on, and I was like, click, it comes in there, like click, yeah. And so Herlin said, man, go to 90, go to 87, 93, and be able to drag, push, and pull every one. And he said, really tighten up. And bro, I was like, man, I got to really work on my time still. Like, man. Because I'm a pusher. I'm a storyteller. And that's what jazz is. But Steely Dan ain't a storyteller, dude. No.
Right.
He's just right here.
Dude. Yeah.
So, and I love the click. I love a click track, and every drummer listening should practice to a click and practice the music without a click and practice playing behind, right on, and ahead of the beat. In any idiom, no matter what idiom, reggae, funk, James Brown, whatever it is, be uncomfortable, be comfortable, be a little back uncomfortable. Like that's, and then that emotion when you're playing, you'll understand, oh man, I'm a little heavy, let me get back here. Or, that's why the hips are so important when you play drummers. Drummers, listen to this. Your hips, it should come from you out, not from the drums back to you. If you're playing from the drums back to you, it's game over already. Then you're going to be the feeler guy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I totally know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I totally know what you're saying. Yeah, so I do, man.
That's all I got. That's all information I have, Benji.
Oh, please.
Been nice talking to you, bro.
Right.
Woo! Good times. I'm out. I'm going to drop the cup.
Dude.
But I mean, let me ask you a question, man. What is one thing, because I know you got to hold your tongue a lot in the booth. And, creative process is happening.
Yeah.
What is it that you see over and over that drummers do that totally, one, make it happen, and number two, totally make it not happen, that you could wish you could just, because what is something you see? One
thing that I see in the studio, as far as making it happen, is that like to me there has to be in a band situation, as far as not just even tempo but the tunes, there has to be a leader role, and there has to be a follower role. And a lot of times what I see and it can be years of practicing bad habits. It can be a kid that's 16 or 17 that's just learning how to play, or 15, or it can be a guy that's 50, that's my age, that has either been practicing bad habits this whole time. But I will see musicians in general, not just drummers, but every musician, and drummers too, I will see them follow other people when they should be leading other people through even sections of songs. And when you get to the fact that it's about a drummer, drummers are, the majority of the time, they are not used to following but yet keeping straight time. If they're following, unfortunately, they're normally following somebody that's rushing, or that their tempo is like this. Yeah. And so it makes them sound like their tempo is bad instead of leading through that section. And that kind of breaks down to like a band scenario. Like say it's a band scenario. Say it's a band that comes in here and there's 5 guys or 5 girls or whatever, and they've all been playing together, but no one is the leader.
Yeah.
And everyone is afraid to either ask to be the leader, or they're afraid to tell someone, you just lead through this section.
Right.
Because then it becomes an ego thing. And that's where the personalities, like you're talking about, the personal aspect of all this stuff, because it comes out in your playing, and it's unfortunate most of the time that it comes out in the playing, because I can hear the tune that this guy wrote, and he's playing guitar on it, and he's plowing through it, and everybody else follow, and I'm not listening to anyone else. This is how the tune goes. Follow me. And sometimes that's good, but if that guy's tempo is horrible and the drummer's following him, then that's not good. And I see that when I get drummers on a click, they don't know how to follow a click, because all they've ever learned is everybody follows me, no matter if I play fast or I play slow or I rush through a fill or whatever. So it's weird to me, because when I play, if I play to a click and I put a click on, I've been working on some stuff last week with Tim. You met Tim, my buddy Tim Heisman, drummer, black beard, long black hair.
Tim, yeah.
Right. So Tim and I have been working on some stuff, and we've been doing it like some stuff of mine, but I just said, look, man, this is the limited time that we have. Tim said, I got lunch from 11 to 12. So this is the way that me as a studio musician and as a writer and as an arranger, this is how fast, and you know too, man, when you're on sessions, this is how fast things have to go sometimes, is that Tim will come over, he will have lunch from 11 to 12, and he will get here about 11:05, and he will leave at 11:50, and when he does, we have a tune hacked out, arranged, and tracked to a click in that amount of time. And it's granted, it's something that I've just come up with, but all that baggage of how to play and all that stuff goes out the window, because there's this big ambiguous thing that's like that. It's not really ambiguous. It's all about the song. It's not about my guitar playing. It's not about all this stuff, and it's not about the drumming. It's not about showing off. It's not about anything. It's about, we have this amount of time, and this song is, and it sounds so metaphysical and so weird coming from a very rock standpoint, but it is.
It is.
And the song
rock is just as metaphysical as any music. It's just a different way of playing.
Yeah.
You know, when I listen to Losing It by Rush off of Signals, I'm like, that's great music.
Yeah, dude.
Very ethereal, very emotional. I still get the same. You know, I think what you're saying too, and I think a lot of musicians have the gift of just really stepping it up when you have the pressure of 55 minutes or 45 minutes. But you just say, you know what? It's got to get done. And, you know, looking back. And my thing is, any musician, if you're a musician, you should always play another instrument and practice to metronome with that instrument.
Oh my God, hallelujah. And
so
amen.
If I do guitar or piano, dude, I get back on the drums, I'm a musician. Versus if I just play the drums, I'm a drummer. There's a big difference.
Dude, there's a guy from Raleigh. His name's Terry Anderson. And Terry is a great songwriter. He wrote I think one of his, I mean, he's had some big hits. He played in a band that I played with years ago, man. And he not
YMCA?
not in the huh?
YMCA?
You're so bad.
I knew you, man.
So bad.
I knew it, bro.
I'm the guy. Which one of the guys had a mohawk in the Village
I
People?
can't
Was
remember.
that me?
I know you had. I think you were the. I know. I'm just kidding. I love YMCA. I love anything disco is awesome, because disco is just like, screw it, man. We're just gonna play some music and dance.
So, dude, I watched this guy play at a gig, and he's the drummer, but then he was the singer. But then he's like, yeah, I'm a songwriter, and I do this. And he was one of the best drummers I had ever seen, because he played drums for the song. If he had written it on guitar, he wasn't. The drums were not the only thing that he had to express his musical, communication.
You know what? Let me stop you right there, man. That is a great point. And I would say something. Neil Peart never would have been Neil without being a lyricist. Because if you just track Neil by himself, it is not that great at drumming. It's actually where he's putting the beat in the music. It's perfect.
Yeah.
But if you'd have played with another band, I mean, he's no Gadsden, man. Gadsden, that's the difference between, what's his name? Levon Helms. I mean,
oh yeah, dude.
I could not, or Stevie Wonder playing behind Stevie Wonder. It's like, couldn't have done that. Wouldn't have thought about that. Just perfect.
Yeah, and you're adjusting like with Levon Helm. He's adjusting his drumming according to his vocals and vice versa. And it's really hard to get another musician to adjust their playing to what you're playing on your instrument, no matter what your instrument is, if it's guitar or bass or vocals. And there's this weird thing of like knowing how, like bass players and drummers, normally want to work together. And normally, yeah, on a good night. That's the goal. On a good night.
Well, man, when Charlie starts singing when we're playing, I'm like, okay, I'm cool. I'm there. I'm good. Just do not move. Because, he's comfortable. But when he's not singing, it's like, oh, here we go. It's always about me adjusting or sometimes when I just leave, he loves it. It depends on,
Right.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's why Blade's so great, because he's a composer and a singer, and he sings. He plays guitar. So when he's playing with Lanois or Nora or whoever, gazillion people.
So tell everybody, you and I know who you're talking about. Tell everybody quickly who you're talking
Blade,
about.
And a lot of cats don't know this about Brian. He basically single-handedly, he may disagree, but he basically brought Joni Mitchell out of retirement, man. Because he was such a big fan. And then if you see them play together, you just see a musician who's playing the drums who understands how to landscape underneath a vocalist and understands giving her what she needs. And he does it for Joshua Redman. He does it for his music. And I've always really enjoyed that storytelling of Brian's. And I tell Brian this all the time. Man, you're such a huge influence on a lot of things. And he'll say the same thing, but I think it's kind of like when your wife tells you your cooking is good. She's just like, oh, it's great, but that I probably didn't influence that dude. We just grew up together in New Orleans and saw the same cats and listened to a lot of Vernell Fournier, which drummers, Vernell is a very accessible beat because it's not slick and super high technical level like a Philly Joe.
Right.
It's right here. And it's just almost a military type of, like, it's right in the middle. So if you're a drummer and you play whatever, if you can get to some Vernell, you'll understand how to play in the trio. And it's kind of a secret unlocking of how to play with the rhythm section,
Okay.
And Ellis Marsalis wrote a thesis for his college doctorate on how to play in the rhythm section versus how to play in the trios. Two different things.
Get out.
Totally two different ways of playing.
Wow.
So when I play with, or whoever plays with the organ trio, you're this. But when you're playing behind horns, you're more like, you're more support. It's just a different way of thinking conceptually.
Right.
Which makes, to me, the drums are the eternal school. You never get there.
Right.
Steve Gadd, man. Steve Gadd with Paul. It's like, Simon and Garfunkel, right? That get any better. Like, wow. Or what was the other drummer that played on Asia? What was his name?
Oh, dude, I have no idea.
What's the other? Was it Jabo Starks? I think maybe.
I don't know. We'll have to Google it.
Anyway, that record to me, those drums are just, it's just hard. It's hard to play so thematically, and you're constructing a symphony of rhythm and not just a drum beat.
Right.
So many people. Yeah. Anyway, I'll shut up.
No, dude, I don't want you to shut up. I want you to keep talking, man. So
to me, drums are colors and textures, and they're rhythms, but they're also grooves. But they're also, when you swirl them all together, that's the most fun.
Right.
Because when you actually dance you're just dancing. That there's no more freer action you can do as a human being than dancing.
Right.
No one's governing you. You're just doing your thing. I won't demonstrate right now, but you know what I'm saying. It's same thing on your instrument. When you're doing the thing, you just, you're not thinking about it, bro. That's when you're like, wow, this is why I continue to be a musician.
And when you mentioned, it's funny that you talk about dancing as far as from an aspect of like an audience or whatever, but watching you play as a drummer, and you talked about hips and you talked about how all that moves. There's so many drummers that I watch, man, and they're stiff and everything radiates out from here, like a T-Rex, and it's like
they're controlling. They're too controlling.
Yeah, and I watch you play, and I watch how much movement your whole body has to do to get to certain things, and it's really weird it's really weird to dissect something like that if you're not, especially if you're not a drummer. But all it takes is really sitting down behind a drum kit a couple of times and realizing how hard it is to play, but then to actually get to all the stuff that you're doing and make it seem seamless and make it seem like it's flowing.
Because I'm thinking of who's dancing and what they're doing while I'm doing it. Because when you're playing second line, you're not going flap, dot. You're just, is this person dancing?
Right.
If they're not, I'm going to try to do something simpler. And then, okay, now they're dancing. I'm going to stick with that.
Okay.
That's really where I'm coming from, man. And James Black, the New Orleans drummer, if you haven't heard him, you got to get the classic Ellis Marsalis in '64. He would talk about the cymbals and drums don't matter who plays them. They're just going to respond to your energy, and your microphones are going to pick up that energy, and then it's going to go into the sound. So whatever your intent is, that's going to be your content. So let's work on drummers' intentions of playing for people to dance and move and shake their ass. That's why you're a drummer.
Yes.
You're not doing talking drums to like call people into dinner like they actually do still. And I've seen it done. Right. I've been to Africa. I've studied with master talking drum players. I'm like, bro, I don't have that long to learn that. Cause that's like it's like playing in a real djembe. Cat's hands are like permanently like, it's like, I want to get what I can from that, but I'm still an American dude. So I'm just going to apply it as best I can globally on the drum set and not think of the drums as a drum set. I think of the snare drum as a talking drum. The bass drum is like a deeper Brazilian. Right. Make it global and then make the cymbals a shaker or a tambourine. That way it's not like, hi-hat, snare drum, bass drum.
See, that's so important too, man, is that like you just talking about the different elements of a kit and saying, make your cymbals a shaker, make your hat. And dude, it's so hard to break guys' brains out of that because like you said, a bass drum is a bass drum, a snare drum is whatever. And it's like, not really, man. Like so many of you guys, once I got
snare drum is that.
Yeah.
That's a snare drum. That's some people. That's snare drum.
Yeah.
The clap.
Yeah.
That's the snare drum. And then think tap versus.
I know.
It makes it simplifies your whole game. And you got to know the historical lineage of the groove from New Orleans to Brazil, Caribbean, Africa, and then the harmonies of Irish. You just have to understand the history. And too many guys get caught up and they stop at jazz. Yo, man. Bro, that is such a small sphere of music and Indian chant, Gregorian chant, and classical bop, chorales. Like, you have to know music, man. And Branford told me one time, he said, man, whenever I'm doing a tour or whatever, can't remember what he said. He said, I always listen to something opposite of what I'm going to do. So
dude. Yes.
So when I come to play with you and Charlie at the thing, I'm not listening to funk music. I am listening to something very wide and open and big. So when I get in there, I'm not in my head. I'm just like, hey, this is what I sound like today.
Right.
It's very fresh. It's very real. And it keeps me on my toes.
Well,
sometimes it doesn't work every time. But wow. But so say la vie, man.
And man, so many of you cats that I'm working with now in that circle that I haven't worked with so much before in the past. Like I've been doing this in this town 20 years, man. So I've worked with a lot of the same people in the town. And then you guys come rolling through and I do a lot of records with you. What I see that's really cool to me, and I've known it for a long time, but it's really hard to convey the idea and the information to all drummers, is that the gear and the kit, when we talked about this earlier, it's not that it doesn't matter, but I watch you guys roll in with a kick and a snare and maybe a floor tom if I'm lucky, and just completely mow the house down with knowledge of what you're playing. And it's not about how many pieces I have and what my options are. Can you take that kick and that snare and that hat and that floor tom, or possibly a ride, maybe not, and can you make it happen with that? And the thing is, you guys can make it happen with less than that. And that to me is what I talk to a lot of drummers about, young drummers and even, like I said, older drummers that'll come in here. And it's really hard to get that mentality out. And I'm just like, dude, you need to strip it back to nothing. You got too many options.
Bro, we had to play bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat, cymbal for a year in New Orleans. Everybody, it was just an unspoken rule.
Awesome.
I mean, Blade, Martin Butler, and Donald Edwards, any drummer, Jason Marsalis, you would go into any coffee shop, not like, the club, you use the whole thing.
Right.
I would see drummers levitate the whole bandstand with just that and just groove. You'd be like, okay, it's all here. It's all here coming out. That is just an extension of your creative spirit, mind, and brain. That's all the instrument is.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, all that other crap. I've been playing a 4-piece. It was one of that I remember. There's so many timbers in just that,
Oh, yeah, dude. Plenty. All the options are, too many options are there sometimes.
Yeah, and if you look, and I don't mean to, get up on Neil's nutsack, but if you really look at Neil's kit, it's a 4-piece kit with other shit all around it. But if you break it down, he's just right here all the time.
Right. That's
his nucleus.
Right.
Right. And so John Bonham too. John Bonham, man.
Oh yeah, dude, especially, man.
But yeah, if you should challenge a drummer, hey man, I got a bass drum for you. I got a snare drum, a cymbal, hi-hat. Charlie would love that. If that's all Cats brought in, bro.
Oh my God.
He would,
Oh, and I know. And like normally if I say Charlie comes in here, speaking of guys that play drums, that play other instruments, say he comes in here to do drums on something, which he has, and
he's killing.
I have a regular 4-piece kit set up. The first thing he starts doing is taking shit off of it.
Yeah.
I just break it all down. He's like, I don't need all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. And then when you realize that the objective is the time and the feel, it's not how many drums can I hit in this competition of drumming, and I try to really break it down to that with guys, that if I take all your shit away, you shouldn't, that should not hurt your feelings. You should just go, okay, and just be able to do it on whatever's sitting there. And all the good guys,
thank you,
and everybody else that comes in, man, that plays, that just floors me when I watch you guys play and when I listen to you play and when I record you, it is that. It's that I just kind of come back to, that, like you said, you have to unlearn so many stuff. And I mean, man, and if they just gave you a kick and a hat, you'd be like, all right. I mean, honestly, it's like you would make it happen and figure it out.
Yeah.
And
you have to. Man, Doug Below, perfect example. Cada, those drummers, that's all they need, bro.
Yeah.
And actually, I've seen drummers do brushes, bass drum, and snare, and I've done many gigs myself like that. And I give all the praise to New Orleans Cats, and like other cats. I've seen other cats play on small kits. It's like, man, are you really hearing all those drums? Is that really what you're hearing? Or just, I feel like Ginger Baker probably was hearing all that stuff, because that band.
Yeah.
But, Neil Peart, he's hearing all that. Stuart Copeland, yes, he's a reggae drummer that plays rock. So he's got to have some stuff, but man, but what's it, Gary Clark Jr., that dude?
Oh, the guitar player. Yeah. Eric was I was talking to Eric this past weekend, and I texted Eric about something, and he's like, me and LaDonna are hanging out with Gary Clark in Austin this weekend. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
I would love that gig, because that drummer is killing. He just 4-piece Freddie all day long. Yeah, man. I don't know his name, but dude, big hair. I love that cat.
Such a vintage vibe too, man. That whole thing has a vibe to it. And vibe, man, that's one word that we haven't mentioned in this whole thing is vibe. Like if you show up and this is a 60s Motown vibe, you know what to take, you know how to play when you walk in the door, you know what to do, and you also know what not to do.
What not to do. Thank you. That's what this podcast should be called, What Not to Do.
Oh, I can
Drummers, change. What not to do.
I swear, man. I swear. Well, man, before my batteries and stuff start running out, let's talk about what you're doing right now and your lesson thing that you're doing, and just throw me some website information. And I'm gonna pop your your website up here on the screen, so when we run this thing on YouTube,
yes, sir.
People can see
the YouTubes. Hey, how you doing, YouTubes?
So if people want to study with Geoff Clapp and they want to all this knowledge we've been talking about, if they want to tap into that, how can they get to you and tell me that?
It's real easy. Clapperdapper@gmail.com. or I'll even give you my phone number. So I don't care. 917-674-1170. And, you know, because you can always block people. But I also, what I'm doing now, I'm releasing a trio record pretty soon with Peter Martin and Reuben Rogers and Nick Payton on Rhodes and trumpet.
You did that a while back, right?
Yeah, right before COVID in New Orleans. Bro.
Dude, do you know how many records are coming out of here now that were done a year and a half ago? Crazy.
Man, bro. And that was fun. We did all that stuff with Charlie in there before that, too. That was fun as crap.
I swear.
Okay, so that, and I would love to be, I'm really, my heart of hearts would love to get into the Nashville Christian world. Not the goofy stuff, but the real stuff.
Right.
Like We the Kingdom, Carrie Joe, You Mercy Me, like the real artists, musicians that I have a big heart for that music.
Right.
Also, I would love to do overdubs. I have my studio set up for overdubbing. Much better than last time we did. I actually have a that's what I do. I love overdubbing.
And that same email address, if anybody wants Geoff to play on anything, Geoff has done some stuff for me. Yeah. It being in Texas now, he was here in North Carolina and close around and could just come right in. But now that he's further apart, if I need him to play on something, I'm like, man, that's got a clap, that's got a dapper groove to it, and I want him to play on something, then what I'll do is send him the reference track and the click and all that, and sends me the tracks back. And that's kind of the way we work on a lot of stuff in here. Is almost like, I call it like correspondence. You know, it's like correspondence drumming.
So fun.
And it's cool. So if you guys are interested in Mr. Geoff Clapp on your stuff, or interested in any lessons,
anything,
all of that,
singer, songwriter, funk, rock, I don't care.
Yeah,
it's all quarter note to me. But Benji, I want to tell you, I got a new MacBook and I'm doing Digital Pro now versus Performer Lite, so it's just so much deeper.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I have more microphones from SE, and it's just a better setup.
That's great, man. Well, and it's funny, man. Are you ready for this? You just said from SE, and I know that Geoff has an endorsement with he has an endorsement with SE mics. But what's funny is if you look, I'll hold this up to my camera.
That's right, Vic Firth.
That's my Vic Firth lanyard. That I'm standing with Geoff one day. So we're talking about something after we had first met, and he's got this box and he cracks it open and he says, "Hey man, you want some stuff?" And I was like, "What do you got?" And he's like, all this stuff Vic Firth sent me, man. I'm an endorser for them, and they just send me all this stuff." And he's got a box full of sticks and stickers and magnets and lanyards and all this great stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, dude." So I swear to you, I have had this lanyard in my pocket with my studio keys on it for 2 years now because of the Dapper. So,
well, man, I appreciate you so much. And I tell you, every time I get to work with you in Earthtones, I learn so much as what you do, because I'm really interested in how you guys think now.
Well,
what you don't do.
You probably learn a lot. I was going to say, you probably learn a lot of what you're not supposed to
do. No. I meant like respectfully what you decide not to say and let happen.
Oh,
it's
man.
Like, okay, I have no idea what you're doing in the magic fingers with the Yoda booth. I'm not even trying to get there.
The magic fingers with the Yoda.
That's crazy. But it's interesting how you mic stuff and where you put your mics, and and how we put Charlie in the corner because he's bad.
Totally should put him in the corner every session.
Bad.
If anybody's ever got Charlie Hunter on a session, just put him in the smallest room you have possible, and he'll continue to play, but he'll bitch less. No, I'm just kidding.
And then he loves to listen to really out jazz. Put some really out jazz on him all day. It's not swinging. He loves it.
He comes in the other day. I swear to you, he came in for a session the other day. You're ready to laugh. You're gonna cry, man. I need to put you on split screen when I tell you this. He comes in the other day, and he walks in, and there's something in my control room playing on shuffle. I either had something on YouTube on shuffle or something. I was out here setting up, and the control room is in there. And so he comes in and he pulls me aside, and he's kind of got this look on his face, and he says, "Dude, I was gonna pull you aside, and I was gonna ask you what this most awful shit was that you were playing, and what this contrived jazz was, like coming out of your speakers. And then I looked, and I saw that I actually know these guys, and I play with them." And I was like,
wow.
And he said, "So I didn't say anything."
Wow. Yeah, he's in a lot of camps. He's in a lot of camps.
It's hilarious, man.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll drive up and I'll just have the loudest jazz playing just because I know it's going to annoy him. I don't care. Charlie's
dude.
But he's such a great. I mean, he was jazzing it out on some stuff. I was like, this cat's so bad.
Oh, dude, so ridiculous. And that's where Geoff and I met each other, was through Charlie Hunter. I recorded you guys playing the show you did it on the one, the first thing.
That's right. That's where we met.
Called me to record that on site, and it was cool, and it's great. And I think
was that the Peter Kankura record or the duo? Record?
That was the stuff. That was the stuff before, and I want to say that it's on.
Wow.
Man, it's released somewhere. It's on Charlie's Patreon or your Patreon.
I think it's on Charlie's Patreon.
Something, but I can't remember. Yeah. So anyway, man, so that's where Geoff and I know each other from, is working with Charlie, but now we know each other outside of those circles and just continue to stay in touch. But dude, I just want to say again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For doing this. And I'm so glad that I could get you on, and for all the fine people, I will have all of Geoff's links to everything that he does running the whole time in this video and all that good stuff. So if you don't see the YouTube version or you're listening to the audio podcast version, Clapper Dapper at gmail.com. That's ClapperDapper at gmail.com. And the Clapper Dapper will hook you up with some lessons, and he will hook you up with some tracking if you need it. And again, man, I just wanted to say thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. Love you, Benji.
All right,
thank you for having me. It's an honor to know you, bro. For real.
Dude, thank you, man. And we will see you next time. I love you, brother. All right.
How you turn this thing off? What?
Thanks again for watching and listening to the new Conversations in Groove podcast. Like, comment, and subscribe anywhere you find a podcast and on our YouTube channel. Always remember, it's live right here from Earthtones Recording Studio.